All right, so let's talk Baker Mayfield and his trade value, right? A lot of dominoes fell, and what has become obvious, if not anything, is that Baker Mayfield ain't going to be on this team next year, right? Deshaun Watson, that's going to be the starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. That is official. They have inked that deal. Jimmy has put that $230 million in escrow because it's all guaranteed. That's deep pockets. And then they have already signed Jacoby Brissett. So they're set. That's the quarterback room for next year. They're going to have somebody that's going to be on the practice squad and be inactive all year. But that's the quarterback room, right? Maybe Nick Mullins is the backup to Jacoby Brissett if Deshaun Watson gets suspended, but that's the quarterback room for this year. It's set. They're just waiting to trade Baker Mayfield. So, again, when we talk about a Baker Mayfield trade, it goes without saying that this is not if, it's when. It's when this happens, right? Because it's got to happen. So that's the Baker Mayfield situation with the roster. It's fairly obvious, but let's talk about his trade value. What is his trade value? Because that's a hard thing to answer. And it's a lot more difficult than I think people give it credit for. Because on one hand, you can look at Baker Mayfield and say, hey, he has shown 2 seasons of promise. And 2 seasons of promise and being a former number 1 overall pick, that usually is enough for people to take a chance on you and spend assets on you. Look at Carson Wentz. He went for a first-round pick last year, or a conditional first-round pick. And then this year, he got traded for 2 third-round picks. So you telling me you can't trade Baker Mayfield and get some assets when Carson Wentz went? Okay, that's fair, right? If we're just looking at production, that's a fair argument. But and even if you look at some of the behind-the-scenes stuff, right? Carson Wentz is not a beloved figure by his teams. It's been known throughout everywhere he's played that he rubs people the wrong way at times, right? Baker Mayfield, similar situation. But there is a big difference here. And when we talk about trade value, there's more than just what a quarterback does on paper that affects their trade value. And the fact of the matter is that Carson Wentz has prototypical size and mobility. And that is going to dare teams to feel like they can fix him because he has the stuff that you cannot teach, which is the size, the strength, and the speed. Unfortunately for Baker Mayfield, he is considered undersized. And he is not a slow quarterback by any means, but not a fast quarterback, right? He's not a guy that you really want running a ton, right? So he doesn't have those genetic gifts that make him look like a piece of clay that can be molded to a lot of NFL coaches, right? So since that is the case, then you run into trouble, right? Because yes, Baker Mayfield is a number 1 overall pick, but he is unlike a lot of number 1 overall picks where he got drafted number 1 overall by John Dorsey based on intangibles, not based on anything physical, right? Most number 1 overall picks, they go because of the physical attributes. The only guy I can think of that went number 1 overall lately that wasn't about their physical attributes was what? Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow went basically on intangibles in college production. And that's good for Joe Burrow. But also Joe Burrow has pretty standard size and athletic ability for what you would want out of quarterback, right? Baker Mayfield, he has the athletic ability. He doesn't have the size. That's going to become a factor because some teams still don't want short quarterbacks, right? They're just out on the short quarterback thing still, even though it don't make sense to me. But some teams will see him at 6'1", don't like him. That is a factor, right? The other factor that affects his trade value, and I think this is the biggest one, is you have to think about what teams would actually want to trade for Baker Mayfield. And let's take your feelings about Baker Mayfield as a player out of it, right? Whether you think he's good or not, that's not really what I'm referring to. What I am referring to is how many teams are in a position to where they would want to pay $18.9 million for 1 year for a quarterback play, right? There are a lot of teams that would want to pay for a quarterback that's at sub $9 million and start them. right? Those are the sorry teams, right? They just want to get a veteran, and they'll be sorry, and they'll sign Case Keenum to start for them or whatever it is that they want them to start. They'll sign that dude to start at under $9 million. Boom, we good. We ain't going to win that many games anyway, right? That's one category of teams. There is another huge category. Well, there's another category of teams that would love to acquire somebody that they could spend a bunch of money on, right? Like if Lamar Jackson became available, Deshaun Watson was available, Russell Wilson was available. The market's huge for those guys because there are a ton of teams that would love to get one of those guys. But then there is this small market right now that is actually interested in Baker Mayfield's whole situation. And that is teams that are good enough to have playoff aspirations, but don't have a quarterback, right? And some of these teams have solved their issues through free agency or very close to solving their issues through free agency, right? It looks like New Orleans is probably going to stick with Jameis. Pittsburgh is going to probably go with Mitchell Trubisky because that's who they signed, right? So they're out of it. Those are two teams that could go for the playoffs, that need a quarterback, and would be willing to spend 18 point whatever $1 million to have Baker Mayfield come in. So now we're looking at maybe 3 teams or 4 teams that you can say are in that situation. And those 4 teams are the Indianapolis Colts, you could say, are in that situation. Maybe the Miami Dolphins, but they don't seem interested. And you go to the NFC, you can see it's probably the Seahawks. You can maybe say the Panthers. And that's probably about it, right? Let me know if I'm missing anybody, but that's probably about it, right? Philadelphia, Jalen Hurts, Baker Mayfield, they're probably going to just stick with the dude they drafted. But yeah, it's about that situation. Maybe Atlanta if they're forced to lose Matt Ryan. Now, that's another factor that goes into Baker Mayfield's trade value is Matt Ryan, because that's a domino that needs to fall, because as much as any of these teams might want Baker Mayfield, any team that would want Baker Mayfield would also want Matt Ryan, and they would probably want Matt Ryan more, especially like a team like Indy. They would want Matt Ryan more because they're not looking for a future guy. They're just looking for somebody for a year, right? Maybe a little bit more, but just a year. I mean, they started Phillip Rivers, Carson Wentz over the last 2 years. They just need a dude to play quarterback right now because their roster is too good not to try to win. So that's the situation with all of this, right? That Matt Ryan domino needs to fall. Now, the latest on that is that Matt Ryan wants a new deal from the Atlanta Falcons in order to stay. He's probably going to get that new deal, right? And good on him. Get one last bag before you retire. But once that situation gets handled, then the market is what? The New Orleans Saints, but they're probably going to go with Jameis. You have the Seahawks, and then you have the Colts. You can maybe throw the Detroit Lions in there. I've heard the Detroit Lions linked in there because of John Dorsey. I think John's probably going to wait to see if Baker is going to hit the market after this year, right? Because he already is on the books for that Jared Goff contract. He's going to want to wait till he can get that off the books, and then he'll try for Baker Mayfield. I don't think this is the year for John Dorsey to go after Baker Mayfield. I could be wrong on that, and he could be fine with having Jared Goff and Baker Mayfield at these high numbers at both plus $15 million. I know Jared Goff is at least 20 and Baker would be at 18, and he would essentially be paying $38 million for 2 quarterbacks, which makes no sense. But again, that's the situation in Carolina. Maybe I don't think it would be Carolina because I just don't think they're interested, right? I don't think any of the teams that were involved in the Watson sweepstakes are going to be any of the teams that wanted to trade for Baker Mayfield, just because I feel like if those teams wanted Baker Mayfield, they were in close enough proximity with this whole situation that they could have already gotten Baker Mayfield as a part of this whole Watson deal, right? So I don't think any of those teams are really that interested. I don't think the Panthers want him, and I don't think the New Orleans Saints want him. The Detroit Lions, I feel like that's a little bit of a long shot. The New York Giants already have their quarterback situation set for this year. They got Tyrod and they got Daniel Jones. They're going to run that through. The Chicago Bears want to be interested. So again, we're looking at the Seahawks and the Colts Now, the reason that Matt Ryan domino to fall is so important for the Browns is because you have to be careful. You don't want Matt Ryan to go to Atlanta, because if Atlanta's not interested in Baker Mayfield, that means your market has swindled to one team and you're screwed. You're not getting anything at that point, right? When your market goes to one team. But that's what they have to watch for, right? That Matt Ryan thing, make sure that doesn't happen. And then you have to hope that both Indy and Seattle see starting Baker Mayfield being more preferable to starting Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, being that the Seattle Seahawks are in the same division as Jimmy Garoppolo for the last 4 years, they might think that, yeah, okay, we'll go with Baker Mayfield over Jimmy Garoppolo, right? Or they might think the opposite. I don't know where they're at. But again, that's another thing, right? Because Jimmy Garoppolo's got to go, right? They've already pretty much said he's going to go, so he's got to go. And that's that. Now, if Jimmy wants a reworked deal wherever he gets traded, that works in the Browns' favor, because you could just get Baker Mayfield right now and figure that whole thing out later. You ain't got to worry about no reworked deal with Baker Mayfield, because his deal is ironclad. You can't rework none of that. Jimmy Garoppolo, on the other hand, you could rework that deal, but you're going to be committing long term. So I think Seattle's probably looking for a 1-year rental. I think the Colts are looking for a 1-year rental. Those are your two teams in your two markets. How long can this take? It's going to take a while, right? I don't think this is going to be a trade that gets announced this week. I would think the Browns would want to get this trade announced as fast as possible, just because you don't want to linger on this whole thing. One, because you want to free up that cap space so you can make a lot of these deals official and really go after some guys that you want and not sit here and wait. And two, if you're trying to get draft picks for this year, you want to do it now. Now, what do I think is going to happen? I think that the capital you're going to get for Baker Mayfield is going to be in next year's draft. I don't think it's going to be in this year's draft. I think if you get a third-round pick, it's going to be a 2023 third. If you get a second-round pick, it's going to be in 2023. If you want to pick this year, it's probably going to be round 4 in the past, right? So probably a 4th, 5th, or 6th, or 7th-round pick this year. You might be able to get in addition to a third-round pick next year, but expect the main piece of the compensation for Baker Mayfield to probably be in 2023 rather than in 2022. I don't know what the value is on Baker Mayfield. I can see where that value could be as high as a second-round conditional pick, and I can see where that value could dip all the way to a 5th-round pick, and that's it, right? Especially since the Browns really have no leverage. This is a situation where he's got to go. Baker's got to go just for cap reasons at this point, right? You just need to get rid of him. You have no reason, anybody has no reason to believe that you're going to keep him on the team. They also have no reason to believe you're going to cut him, so they know you got to get rid of him. You hope the market is enough to where you can trade him without having to attach a pick, because that could happen if it goes down to one team that's interested and you really need to get rid of him. You might have to attach a pick to sweeten the pot. Even though a team sees him as an asset, that's the position that they're going to play. That's the leverage that they're going to have. So there's really no leverage here for the Cleveland Browns. They're just going to try to pit the Seahawks and the Colts against each other. And the earlier this deal happens is probably the better, right? If this deal happens before Matt Ryan's available, or before people know if Matt Ryan's available, the better. If this happens before Jimmy Garoppolo gets traded, the better. Now, if Jimmy Garoppolo gets traded somewhere wild that we aren't expecting, like Philadelphia, okay, it's good, right? If Matt Ryan then also stays in Atlanta, then that's good. Then all of a sudden, these two teams who are in the same position are fighting over the same guy. And we know when Indy fights and they start to get worried they're not going to get somebody, they tend to overpay, and you might get like a second-round pick. That's a scenario I see where you get a second-round pick, right? If Jimmy Garoppolo gets traded somewhere we're not expecting, so let's say he gets traded to Carolina or like Philly or something like that, then boom. All of a sudden, the market got a lot more robust for Baker Mayfield. But if Jimmy Garoppolo gets traded to either the Colts or either the Seahawks before this whole situation's over with, before Baker Mayfield's off the Cleveland Browns officially, then we're in trouble. when it comes to compensation. So that's kind of what the Browns are waiting on. That's what I think at least is going to affect the compensation. What I would look out for, the Jimmy Garoppolo domino to fall is really a big one. And that's where I think the Browns are when it comes to Baker Mayfield in this trade value. Now, let me know what you think in the comment section below. What do you think his trade value is? If you're a fan of another team that's in the Baker Mayfield sweepstakes, that's in the Baker Mayfield conversation, then let me know what you would want to give up for Baker Mayfield. But that's going to be it. I want to thank y'all for watching. Y'all have a great day. Have a good night.